On Tuesday, Minister Johnson announced the closure of the remaining power stations at Collie in 2027 and 2029. When he made that statement, he said that the government would continue to supply both affordable and reliable power supply. Now, I think the public of Western Australia would have fair reason to doubt those two claims. Since this government's come to power, the number of extended duration outages, or the number of customers affected by extended duration outages of over 12 hours, has increased by almost 60%. And that was last year, and the year before the increase was a 90% increase in outages or number of customers affected by outages over 12 hours. In addition, we've seen substantial cost increases for customers. The connection fee for customers, that's a daily supply fee, has gone up by 120%, and the tariff, the usage per kilowatt hour, has gone up by 13.5%. These are well above inflation and substantial increases in the cost of electricity. We need to see the detail from Minister Johnson to show how he's going to manage the 700 megawatt gap between the electricity supply that will be available in 2030 and the electricity supply that is going to be required at peak demand. And we want to see that detail. What is the impact of that on reliability, and what is the impact of that on cost? Because it's been very clear that both reliability and cost reliability has deteriorated and cost has gone up. Now, you know, Minister Johnson gets upset when he's called blackout bill, but what's very clear is that reliability has deteriorated significantly under that minister. Might say many people would remember the terrible outages over Christmas that affected metropolitan Perth, the Midwest, but especially Kalgoorlie, and just a few weeks ago we saw Kalgoorlie over 4 days have two extended outages affecting large parts, or in fact almost all of those communities.
So obviously there's a fair bit of time between now and those stations being shut down. Clearly they've got time to get that sorted.
Yeah, look, there is time, but the reason we want to see the detail, this government has the most appalling record on delivery. You know, you're talking about a major capital investment. I mean, the government have indicated a $3.8 billion investment. Look at what happened with Metronet. They said that was going to be a $3 billion program. The cost has blown out now to almost $10 billion, but also not a single passenger has been able to access those new services because they are literally now years overdue. We can't afford to have that poor delivery when it comes to replacing the power supply from Collie.
What about the storage issue? The battery size is going to be enormous, 1,000 megawatt hours they'll need, when at the moment they're looking at 100 down at Kwinana. How are they going to do that? Do you think that's actually possible?
Look, I'm sure it's technically possible, but it's complex, not at all trivial. In fact, they'll need 2,800 megawatt hours of battery storage in terms of total capacity. So that means they'll need about 700 megawatt 4-hour batteries. Now that's huge. I'm not aware of anyone that's got that at the moment. So there will be technical challenges. And of course, you know, that assumes that you're only going to have outages for 4 hours. What happens if you're on peak demand and you lose those other renewable sources, there's a power line down? You know, that's why we want to see the detail. I don't think this is impossible. I think it's achievable, but we want to see the detail, and I think the public of Western Australia should be able to see the detail.
Do you think with those batteries that the government's counting on the technology advancing in the next few years so that they will be able to do it? Is it a bit of a leap of faith?
Look, I think it's more an engineering exercise, I'll be honest. I think that those things are possible, but they are enormous. They're much bigger than existing facilities. I mean, substantially bigger than the facility in South Australia, for example. So that is going to be a challenge, I think. And again, I say, let's see the detail, and we want to see how they're going to deliver it. This government is appalling on delivery. They are not delivering on their major capital projects.
So you're not against what they're doing, you just want to see the detail of how it will happen?
Well, you know that we, you know, in going into the last election, we had a policy that the minister was highly critical of, but yeah, it's certainly, you could see that those power stations are unaffordable because they are being used for a duty that they're not designed for. And that you needed a transition. But absolutely, we want to see the detail. We want to see the detail in terms of what they're going to do, how much it's going to cost, and when it's going to be delivered.
You obviously talked about the cost blowouts in relation to Metronet. Are you going to take further the $6.6 million payment that's been made in relation to the Huawei?
Absolutely. That's a matter we'll pursue with the government. I mean, you know, back in 2018, the government were warned in explicit detail that Huawei probably wouldn't be able to deliver that contract because of security concerns. And the government went ahead, despite the opposition at the time questioning that. And now we have the taxpayers of Western Australia, you know, wasting $6.6 million on a payout on a contract that should never have been entered into. I might say, you know, tonight, keep saying this, but there'll be around 1,000 people sleeping rough around Greater Metropolitan Perth. That $6.6 million could have gone a long way to helping those people tonight.
The airport mask mandate's dropped. What do you make of it?
Look, probably sensible in that the airport's a very large venue and masks have been dropped everywhere else except in aged care and hospitals, so likely, you know, I think that's a sensible move. Look, I think especially a lot of people overseas probably find the masks a little bit intimidating when it's compulsory, so I think that was a sensible move by the government.
Just back to the Metronet, so you say you'd take it up with the government, but I mean, is it something that is the sheer negligence of that $6.6 million payment worthy of some form of committee inquiry?
Well, look, certainly I think that is a worthwhile suggestion. It's a vast sum of money and taxpayers' money, and as I've said, entirely preventable. They were warned. It wasn't that they went into this with their, you know, their eyes open. They were warned by more than one source that this was very high risk and it probably couldn't be delivered. They went ahead anyway.
Do you know why it's taken so long for the government to reveal the circumstances around the payment? I mean, those questions?
I think, you know as well as I do, this is the least transparent government Western Australia's ever had. They just try and hide things and delay them as much as possible in revealing information.
You met with, sorry, I knew that was too. You met with Peter Dutton this morning.
Yeah.
I mean, did he say to you, how are we going to get the ship right again here in WA?
Look, yeah, had a good meeting with Peter Dutton this morning, and look, wasn't it wonderful that Western Australia was, you know, one of the first places he came since he's been announced as leader, and he's got a big focus on WA. That was apparent from the meeting this morning. He sees it as such an important state. You know, we're going to be facing 2 elections in 2025, and we discussed how we would work together to make sure we maximise the effectiveness of the state campaign and the federal campaign leading into that election.
Did you get into any of the issues around the Liberal Party in WA? I mean,
no, look, we
hear about the Clan a lot.
Very much focused on what we're going to do to work together around policy and around the way we coordinate our campaigns leading into that hectic year in 2025.
But obviously, you know, you've still got headaches from the Liberal Party review of the state election. How would you say you're progressing those recommendations?
Look, around half of the recommendations have already been implemented. The President, Richard Wilson, I think is doing an excellent job discussing with all parts of the parties how we'll have some good amendments going forward to our state conference in July. I am confident that we will get good consensus around a plebiscite, in particular for pre-selections at that meeting. And that's going to be critical for demonstrating to the public that we have our affairs in order.
And what about, though, one of the most stinging sort of revelations was sort of bulk billing memberships on credit cards. Is that something that people have to be held accountable for, individuals?
Look, I think there was, as you know, there was an investigation into that. Where we're very focused in is what we do at the future. What the President made clear was that the practice of doing that was in fact legal under the rules as they existed. So the important thing is that we make sure that that can't be possible in the future, and there are some procedural changes that have been made. That will be impossible in the future to do that, and that's important.
Did you discuss that sort of?
No. Look, we're very much about how we were going to work together cooperatively to maximise our outcome in 2025, and that's our focus. We can't change government until then in either the state or federal, and we have to work together to make sure we maximise our collective effectiveness in doing that.
Did he ask you about Justin Langer?
No, look, he didn't, but I've had a good chat with Dustin, and I can tell you what, the person most surprised about that article that appeared in the West was Justin. So, interesting times, isn't it, when you see a story like that?
When, out of interest, did you speak to him after the article?
Well, absolutely, because he was completely unaware of anything until he read it in the paper as well, so a bit of a surprise there.
That's probably what happens when the journalist doesn't go to the person they're
well, fascinating. I'm just fascinated. I'd love to be a fly on the wall at the editorial meeting around that one.
Did you try to twist his arm though? I mean, you know.
Look, he's a fantastic guy. Look, maybe Northwest Central, Gary. Maybe you could put that out there.
Okay. I'll ask him first.
Okay. Cheers.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay.